Truck Stop Killer, hosted by u/Turtles the God. I work at a truck stop in a very small town. Don't really get a lot of people coming in, so most nights are sort of slow for the graveyard shift. There are two people. One person watches the front and the other takes out the trash and boxes. The dumpsters were about 20 yards from the front of the store, and one night, the person in the back should have taken out the trash at least 3 or 4 times. When you walk out, all of the trucks park next to the dumpsters, and about 3 in the morning, I had to make my final trip to the dumpster. It was about 40 degrees, so I often wore a large jacket, and when taking the trash out, I would always carry a knife. It was long and thin and was very sharp. I remember the night very well. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life. I was about 21 at the time. I was 6'3" and weighed about 190 pounds. I was never one to be caught in a gym, so it was safe to say I wasn't at peak physical condition. When taking the trash out, I remember there had been a string of killings at rest stops all over Oklahoma. I knew I looked fairly big, so nobody would walk up on me so I thought. I was about 20 feet from the dumpsters when I heard a very deep voice asking if I could help him change a tire on his truck. I asked the man to give me a second for me to dump the trash, and he obliged. While dumping the trash, I thought to myself, how did he make it to the truck stop if his tire was so fucked up? I started putting things together and I didn't like it. The man was very large and I knew I couldn't take him. But I tried to make myself look larger. I guess it didn't work, because after I finished dumping the trash, he said, "Have you heard about them killings?" I told him I had, and that it was horrible, and asked him why he was deciding to change his tire at 3 in the morning. He gave off several small grunts as if he was laughing to himself. I didn't know what I was going to do. I put both of my hands in my pockets, grabbing my knife. As I did that, I see a large tire iron in his hand. I knew what was going on, and without hesitation he closed the distance between us, swinging the tire iron at my head. But instinctively, I lifted my arms up to defend myself. I felt a swift and painful crack on my left arm, now dangled by my side. I was now mere inches from the man. The smell he gave off was putrid. I wanted to vomit, but I realized that I was holding my knife. I flipped it open. The man's eyes went from delight to pure fear as I brought the knife down time and time again. The man now backpedaling away from me. He swung the large tire iron again, barely grazing my stomach. I was in a full rage, now slashing until I saw the man lay down, dropping his weapon. At this point, a couple of people got out of their trucks to see what the commotion was about. As I was yelling obscenities at the man, I began to cry, realizing what horrible things this man has done. Picking up the tire iron that was splattered with dark red splotches, knowing that this man had taken the lives of over 10 people made me sick. I wanted to bring the iron down on the man's head just to finish him, but I knew I needed to let him suffer, as he made the victim's family suffer. I did. I did bring it down, but not on his head, but on his legs, until I felt a large hand grab my arm, stopping me from killing him. It was my manager. Noticing I had been gone for a long time, had come to check on me. One of the truckers had called the police when they had seen me. I told the police everything. They had told me that they watched the video from several cameras and had commended my bravery, but I felt sick. They had told me that the man almost died and that he would be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. I still work at that truck stop. They paid me handsomely and had taken care of my medical bills. I moved up in the company. I'm now the manager of my very own store. I share my story to my employees as a warning to never take out the trash alone. My Real Horror Story. Written by you/seen that done that. This happened to me a long time ago, but I can still recall that day as clear as rain. It's a bit long, but I'll try to simplify as possible. When I was young, maybe 5 or 6 years of age, my family moved over to Hungary from the UK due to my father's job requirements. In the early 1990s, when the dissolution of the Soviet Union had turned the Socialist Republic to liberal democracy, allowing large corporations finally to enter the country and establish a foothold in the land of opportunity. My father was from one of these companies. We bought a large mansion-like house in Budapest. The house was large with 4 rooms and a large front and backyard. I was told the house was considerably cheap compared to its large size. Our parents thought it was because the country was under communist rule that everything was so cheap. A few months had gone by and me and my sisters were getting settled in nicely. It was great having a huge backyard and school was fun. We were sent to one of those newly established American international schools, the ones that have Christian backings. Anyway, I was not really into religion and found the teachings of the Bible boring at most. But at least the hamburgers and pizzas were cheap. More weeks went by and we were now completely at home in our new house. But then, things got weird really fast. I shared my room upstairs with my sister, and we would talk ourselves to sleep every night. But one night, we were both really tired from some vigorous backyard playing. So we fell asleep almost instantly that night. I was woken in the middle of the night looking for a glass of water. As I woke, I took a glimpse towards my sister's bed that was on the other side of the room. Then I saw it. In the dark room, on her bed, my sister was sitting up. I couldn't see her properly, only her shadowy silhouette. Before I could say anything to her, she laid back down. But it wasn't a normal laying down. She just slammed into her bed like you would when you're frustrated. Odd, I thought, but I didn't give much thought to it. My need for a glass of water was a higher priority. But just before I got up from my bed, I saw her sit up again. She just sprung up. It was way too weird and I froze. Then she slammed herself back down into the bed, and then sprung up again, slammed down into her bed, again and again. The bed shook, making squeaky noises every time she slammed into the bed. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just lay still in my bed, looking at my sister's shadow, just sit up and lay down again. I don't know how long it had been. Seemed like hours, but she stopped. She sat there, very still. Her dark silhouette now seemed even darker and even black. Then she slowly turned her head towards my bed. I shut my eyes as hard as I could, hoping that this was all a bad dream. Moments passed and I mustered the strength to open my eyes. I looked towards my sister's bed and was met with a dark, blacked out face, fully turned towards me. Panic started to set in, my heart pounding mad, and I wanted to scream, but my mouth was frozen shut by fear. Cold sweat built up and silence filled the room. The fear was overwhelming, and I couldn't stand. I had to do something, because I thought I would suffocate at this rate. I don't know where I got the strength to do so, but I rushed out of my bed and ran towards her. I came up to my sister so fast, but the next minute I saw my sister laying down in her bed, fast asleep. The dark shadow gone like mist. I frantically shook her awake. My sister woke up to my cries and shaking, confused and still half asleep. I told her what I saw, and that we should probably make our way to our parents' room. But my sister laughed it off, saying it's not funny, and she doesn't believe in supernatural stories. I had no choice but to go back to bed, as I wasn't about to let anything happen to my little sister. That night, I couldn't sleep. I watched my sister all throughout the night. Thankfully, nothing happened through the rest of the night, but I couldn't shake off that eerie feeling that something was amiss. After that night, everything seemed out of place. The house that we were comfortable to run around in didn't look the same. There was something about it that gave me the creeps, and soon I was nagging my parents to move out. Of course, they just shrugged it off and said I watched too much sci-fi and horror movies, and that they were getting to my head. Days passed, and I was losing sight about the eerie feeling of the house. Life seemed to fall back into place, and I almost forgot about the incident. But they were far from over. I woke up one morning from screams by my mother, who just came out from her room that morning. She was looking at me. I was hanging from the side of the second-floor staircase upside down like a bat. As soon as I came to my senses, my legs gave away, and I would have fell head first if not for my father, who had rushed out hearing my mother's screams. My father grabbed hold of my legs just as they were giving away. I was diagnosed of somnambulism, or sleepwalking. The doctor said it was common in children and attributed them to sleeplessness and nightmares. My parents banned me from watching horror movies or any kind of content that may fuel my nightmares. But after that day, I kept on sleepwalking, and every time would wake up hanging upside down from something. My parents were highly religious and became worried about it. Talk of exorcism and demonic possession were quickly brought up, and I remember a priest visited us not long after. The priest first visited our room. He was in there for a good hour or so and cautioned us not to enter until he deemed it safe. When he came out, there was an uneasy expression on his face. He started looking around and muttering something, maybe Latin, I wasn't sure. Then he eventually made his way downstairs again. Then he stopped and looked up. He was standing, looking up at the ceiling with a face expression that chilled me. Something about his expression just said supernatural. The ceiling was located right beneath where our rooms were. He then motioned my parents over to speak to them for some time. My parents' faces turned white, and we all moved out and rented a hotel room that day. The next day, my parents hired construction workers to tear down the ceiling located under our bedroom. They found a small trapdoor in the ceiling, and when they opened it, they found a small bag of bones from some small animal, maybe chicken or something. Also inside the small compartment, there was a small doll made of the same bones from the bag, hanging by a small thread upside down. Needless to say, my parents sold the house and we moved out immediately. My parents' religious belief and faith had tripled after that. As for me, I had strayed alien to Christianity. I'm not an atheist and I still believe in God and all, but churches make me uneasy for some reason. I stopped going when I entered college and never been to one ever since. But that incident in Hungary had stopped me from not believing altogether. Something supernatural walks among us on this plane of existence. That I'm sure of. My recent encounters have also led me to believe in the supernatural. But that is for another story.